heard about a place in the wilds of Ontario called Midland, and there was this place that was looking for employees. And so I thought, well, I'm going to give it a try. I don't think I'll see if I can't, go for a job up here. So I applied and I met with several people, one of which was Sharon Armstrong. And Sharon Armstrong, bless her heart, we had a great interview, and after a period of time, didn't really hear anything, and then had a second interview with Bill Byrick. And of course, with these interviews, when you're in Toronto and all of that, I figured, to myself, what am I going to do to try and get this job? And of course, what I ended up doing, I put braids in my hair, and I wore a nice, leather vest, and decked it out as the Indigenous profile for a period of time. And I guess they all liked me to a point where they eventually offered me a job. So I recall going to Sainte-Marie Among the Hurons for the very first time in 1985. And in 1985, I walked through the doors for the very first time and kind of got acquainted with the place, and met some of the other employees there, primarily the Indigenous staff, and figured out, well, what is my role? What am I going to be? What am I going to be doing? And I started working on my own outfit, putting my leather pants together and different accoutrements and so on. And after about a week of going through this stuff and learning a little bit about the history of, what Sainte-Marie was all about, I took my first formative steps onto the historic site. And I remember it clearly because that very first day, in full, traditional garb, walking through the gates and going out onto the historical site. And the very first people that I met was a young German couple. And I have no idea what they were saying, but they were excited to kind of see me. And there I am standing there, and there's these young people, just saying things and pointing at me. And I realized they wanted a photograph. And so, great, okay, well, let's take a picture. Couldn't talk to them at all, but it was for a young guy coming off the reserve, living in Toronto, being a shy guy that I am, it kind of snowballed from there, thinking that, well, that was kind of interesting, but nobody wanted to hear anything I had to say. From that time forward, for I'd say about 6 years in my formative time there, that's all it was just pictures. Got the long hair, got the look, fit into the wonderful picture that Sainte-Marie is, a great backdrop. That's all I was doing, was just posing for pictures and posing for pictures and posing for pictures. And all the while, all I wanted to do was just talk. Well,
that is the role of an interpreter.
And that is the role of the interpreter, is to be able to, put two reasonable sentences together and make it sound interesting. So I worked on that, and I was lucky enough in 1987 to have an opportunity to work with an older gentleman by the name of Charlie Labarge. And Charlie was a canoe builder, and he built birch bark canoes. And I would sit with this gentleman all day long, and I'd watch how he would just approach visitors, smiling and just being so open with them, and they would just flock towards him as he would speak. And I just watched, and I watched how sometimes he would make a joke. Sometimes it was a joke at the expense of the visitor, and they wouldn't even realize it, but he would look at them with a little smile, and something clicked. The way he was doing things, I really started to pick up on that. And it was around about that time where I started realizing, well, it's more than just a job. I became more interested in, number one, the history. I became more interested in education and educating the visitor in terms of issues. The global issues, the North American issues dealing with Indigenous people. And it kind of snowballed from there. And my interest grew in terms of not only how you interpret, but what you interpret and what you're doing at hand to pull people in as a hook. So if I'm sitting out there on our historical site, it would be a matter of, what am I building today? What can I do with my hands that will be that hook to get people to come in and not just want to take the picture, but want to talk, want to discuss not only the aspects of the history of the historical site, but to get into the nitty-gritty. What makes you want to do this? What makes you want to build this? What makes you want to, to be more than what you actually are? And I honed that skill over many, many years. And interestingly enough, within probably about another, I'd say about 8 years later, a lot of the staff that I worked with, they started coming up with a saying. It was very simple. Anything you think you can do, Dell can do better. And I kind of took that to heart. So, my interests grew, and I ended up learning more about 17th century carpentry techniques, timber frame construction, different kinds of tools, how to work them, how to manipulate them. So it became my area of expertise, not only the indigenous aspect of learning to build a birch bark canoe, building basketry, doing lacrosse sticks, doing, this, that, and the other. I took the whole site and I began this intense, I guess for lack of a better term, apprenticeship without having the mentor to apprentice under, but the site became that. It became, my background. It became who I was eventually. And I couldn't separate myself from that. So there came a point in time where I found where if I was traveling somewhere, my interest in history grew to the point where everywhere I went, I was attracted to museums. I would go to museums and learn their history, and I would go to museums and find out what worked for an interpreter at a different site, whether that be here in North America, here in Canada, down the States, or in Europe, whatever the case may be. I took what they were doing and I grew and I grew and grew to the point where my interpretive philosophy was very, very simple. Just do it. Just do it. And if you can't, figure out a way to do it. Work with your hands, get that done for the betterment of the people that came through. Because eventually I started realizing and thinking, the people that are coming through the sites, they're paying a good chunk of change and they deserve everything that they can get.